What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. And before you ask, this is a scratch, okay? It's not the other thing that you think it is. I'll give you one guess as to who did it. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, have you ever taken photos? Do you like to take photos on a regular basis? Have you ever taken an almost perfect photo, except for the fact that it was completely ruined by a shadow? Hey, me too. Don't worry about it. We can't always have perfect lighting, perfect softbox lighting outside. Sometimes we take photos at high noon, when the sun is highest in the sky and shining directly down on us, causing all these types of awful shadows. That's okay. We can't always avoid this, right? Sometimes we have to get that shot at that specific time, and there's going to be a shadow, and there's no way to avoid it with in-camera. Sometimes you're running and gunning at a wedding, an event, and there's just no way that you can set up the perfect lighting that you need. But hey, we shouldn't have to always avoid it when we have technology like Photoshop, right? So in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to remove any shadow from any photo using Photoshop. Let's go. Alright friends, here we are in Photoshop, and we have our photo loaded up and ready to go that we're going to remove the shadow from. This is a stock photo that I do have the rights to, and I know that this shadow was probably an aesthetic choice from the photographer, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to pretend like we need to remove that for whatever reason. But I do actually like the style, so whoever did the stock photo, good job. I like it, but we're just going to use it for the purposes of this video. Alright, the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our background layer, Command or Control J, and we're going to rename our layers. So we'll just know that this is the duplicated layer, and that is the background layer. Perfect. And then on the duplicated layer, we're going to go up to Filter and go down to Camera Raw Filter. And it's going to bring up this prompt window, and let's just go ahead and make it nice and big so we know what we're doing here. Okay, great. So now we're going to go to our adjustment brush right here, and we're going to make sure that mask options is checkmarked, and we're going to go up to this little setting tab and say reset brush settings. Okay, and then we're going to have this really big brush, and you can downsize it by using your mouse wheel, or left and right brackets makes it bigger or smaller. So make it nice and small, and we're gonna just highlight the shadow right on her face. And it's gonna pop up as red because we said show our mask. So we know where we're painting, we know what we're doing, so that's good. And then we're gonna come back to mask and uncheck mark it so that we can't see it anymore, but we know that it's still there because of this indication right here that we have our mask on. And we're just gonna start messing around with our exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows to see if we can make this shadow match the tones of the face around the shadow. So exposure is a great place to start. So we're just gonna start lifting that exposure, but you don't want to do too much, of course, but you can see that that's already starting to make a pretty big difference in the shadow on her face. But we don't want to just blast it out of the water like that, because that obviously looks terrible, right? So we want to make it a little more subtle. So that's a good place to start. I'm going to go back down to contrast and just try to lift that up a little bit. And then highlights, also a good one. And shadows, great place to start. Yeah, that seems to really be making a difference there. And you can, depending on the severity of the shadow that you're trying to mess with, you can mess with all of these settings here. So whites, definitely want to give that a go. Blacks, clarity, and dehaze even. So dehaze is going to make the details pop out a little more, which, as you can see, in turn kind of brings out that shadow a little bit more. So that's why you want to find a good balance between all of these settings. And yeah, we want to make sure that her face still looks nice and crisp. So clarity is good to put on there. Blacks, we'll just, oh, nope, that's bringing it down. We want to bring blacks up. Nice. Nice. That looks really good. So now we did do a really good job of bringing that shadow, lifting it up and making the exposure a little more even, but we can still kind of see like the lines around the shadow. So no big deal. What we can do is zoom in and we can go back to our brush, make it very, very tiny, and try to just lift out those lines. Wow, that's pretty effective. Oh my gosh. You can barely see it anymore. Although it is a little hot on the exposure side. So just gonna bring it down a bit. And wow. Good job, Photoshop. We're basically there. I didn't even have to do my other steps, but I'm gonna still show you them. So if you're still experiencing some of the outlines of the shadows that are still prominent, like as you can see right here, that's still a little prominent, right? So what we're gonna do is hit OK, and we can actually use our spot healing tool to lift some of that out. So let's grab our spot healing tool and zoom in. And super close. And we're just gonna try to get rid of some of these lines. Like right here, kind of, you can see the line a little bit. Nice. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with the new Photoshop. They really made some good changes here. Like, look at how great that looks. So in specifically this photo, there's still gonna be that element of kind of a different tone around the bridge of her nose and her eye. And that's because the other parts of her face are actually blown out from the sun, you can see here. So that's gonna be hard to mimic that tone because it's gonna make her whole face blown out. But if we zoom out, I mean, it looks pretty good, I think. Barely a shadow at all. But you will come across a time where your shadow is just very, very intense, and after doing the spot removal method and the other method that we just did, you're still going to find yourself seeing those lines in the shadow and maybe even still seeing a different tone in the skin color. And if that's true, then you're gonna just go back and do the exact same thing again with the camera raw filter. So you just go back in, start a new brush stroke or reset brush settings, and you're gonna just do the same process over again until that shadow disappears. And this entire process was actually curated from what I learned in college when we didn't have Photoshop 2021. So I'm actually kind of shocked right now how well this worked. Photoshop is doing a great job. So if you're gonna do this process, make sure you have Photoshop 2021. It's gonna be so much quicker, so much easier. I had all these other steps planned out to show you guys, but clearly we don't need it. And you might not need it either because Photoshop knows what it's doing here, I guess. So if the two steps that I just showed you was not enough for the intensity of the shadow that you have, then just redo the steps over again. So once you do the steps once and you still are seeing the shadow, you're still seeing the outline of the shadow, then just repeat the process and keep doing that until the shadow's gone. And I promise you, it will be gone. Well, friends and fam, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope that you just might have learned something. How cool would that be? Please subscribe. I hope you all are thriving and living your best life and every variation in between. You guys rock. I love you so much. Bye.